Live. And now we are recording. Nice. Go me. All right, let's go to the intro.
All right. Just remember what I've taught you.
What the fuck is that?
Hey, yo.
Oh man, can I just take a second here and point out that it's really nice to get all the equipment all working together at the same time. I'm really pleased about that. So Zoom, Twitch, say hi to YouTube. YouTube, say hi to Zoom and Twitch. We're doing this all. This is great. All the buttons are working. It's really going well. I'm already super pleased. All right. Let's get this thing started, shall we? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are doing great. It is wonderful to be here again in your ears. It is really and truly my great pleasure to be right here in your ears one more time, giving you the most amount of writing advice you can possibly handle within 2 hours. If this is the first time you're hearing this, hi, welcome to the Writer's Chat. I, through no fault of my own, continue to be John Adamus, the writer next door, and you are about to spend the next 2 hours or so getting as much help to whatever questions you have about writing. I don't know what you're writing. It doesn't ultimately matter to me at the moment what you're writing. You could be writing anything. You could have 1,000 years of experience with a ton of publications, or this could be day one for you. It really doesn't matter. It's my job to be right here and help you get better and get to your goal creatively, wherever that might be. And the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, dreamers, hopers, puppeteers, enthusiasts of raisins, people who enjoy cookies, people who can look past pumpkin spice for things, anyone who understands that you don't necessarily need to give up a kidney or a liver for writing. Anybody who's ever had to wake up and find that the floor is really cold and you really wish you had better slippers, bathrobe enthusiasts, monks, beer makers, cheese eaters, sex workers, dancers, and most importantly, the comrades. Welcome. It is wonderful to be right here. It is fantastic to be right here with you. Oh, thank you so much for subscribing. It means, holy goodness. It means a great deal. Of course, I'm streaming live on YouTube, so you're going to actually watch me get real or listen to me get really creative because, like, YouTube doesn't like the profanity, which is weird. I get, like, PG-13 rules. I think I can say, like, one good curse. So I'm saving it. I'm saving it up for a really good question. But for now, we're going to have to get a little creative. If this is the first time you're checking this out, by the way, here's really how this works. Since the last time we spoke, so about a week ago, I've been collecting questions from all different kinds of writers writing all different kinds of things, and I've corralled about a dozen or so of their questions, as well as the questions of those people over in Zoom, over on Twitch, and over on YouTube. And it's going to be my great pleasure to sit here and get you answers. So let's do it. Let's get started. We start, as always, with question 1. Question 1. Hey, John, why is starting with a dream sequence a bad idea? Okay, let's be real clear here. Let's be really clear. It's not necessarily a bad idea, like if you do it, it's the end of the world. It's a bad idea because it can turn into a very lazy idea. So maybe bad's not the right way to put it. Maybe it's just not the best way to accomplish the thing you're trying to do. It is a path trod incredibly nearly over the hump by so many folks. And here's why. Here's the technical reason why. There is going to come a point, especially in the intro at some point, whether that's in the middle of the chapter, a couple sentences in, 2 chapters in, whatever. There's going to be a point where the narrative thread of the dream stops. And you have to have the character wake up. Because presumably, the story is occurring when the character is awake. Now, if you're writing something where that is not the case, then clearly this isn't really going to apply to you, and you've got the edge case rather than the norm. But that disconnect between, oh my God, when I dream, this happens, and when I'm awake, that happens, the reader is going to have to try and navigate that. The reader is going to have to try and get used to the idea that you are slamming the brakes on one train of narrative thought, and you are opening to another. And you, the writer, are hoping that there's going to be some spillover. There's going to be some carriage of, oh, okay, so that's the same momentum we had in the dream is the same momentum we had, or the same momentum that we have when we wake. And that's not necessarily true, because think about how active your most active, crazy dream is. Maybe you're doing super heroic things. Maybe you're doing extra spicy adult things. Maybe you're doing both. Maybe you're commanding legions of birds and eating cheese. Who knows? But when you wake up, what do you do when you wake up? Stumble out of bed, move across the room, go to the bathroom, stumble over here, answer the phone, check your messages, do whatever. There's going to be a disconnect. There's going to be a real big shift between how the dream was in terms of its capacity and potential for activity for the character, and the juxtaposition of how the character is otherwise. Now, some people are going to play that up on purpose to demonstrate like, oh, this person's dreams are the best part of their life, which, sure, if that's what you want to do, great. But more often than not, what happens with dream setups is that the dream is forcibly attached to plot, like it's some kind of prophecy, or it's some kind of major tool for story development, like the bad guy visits us in our dreams, so we got to stay awake, or like the dreams are trying to tell us something, and it becomes this very ham-handed, overly structured thing that you have to find reasons to go back to. And while there's nothing wrong with that in concept, in practice, it becomes a little forced, like, oh, okay, so I guess we got to go back to sleep so we can advance the plot of the story. Well, then I, the reader, am going to start to lose interest in the non-sleeping parts. And you, the writer, don't want me to lose interest and start playing favorites and picking and choosing new chapters and skimming where I'm disinterested. Try your best when writing to keep the reader engaged from page to page, from scene to scene, from chapter to chapter. A dream sequence sets kind of a beaten dead horse precedent. Oh, it's a dream sequence. I know what I'm getting into. If you're going to defy it, if you're going to challenge it, if you're going to do better than that, and honestly, I really hope you do. If you're going to do that, honestly, don't make the dream sequence like the plot vehicle. Dream sequences are fine. They can be great tools for getting a writer to express to a reader, hey, this is how I'm telling a story. Or, hey, this is going to reveal something about character that's not specific to a plot or a character arc or something. It's just, hey, the character's got a big active imagination and we're going to move forward. But by and large, a dream sequence sets some very, very overdone expectations. That's why it's not a great idea. That's why I generally tend to steer people away from them, especially if it's their go-to solution for, well, how do I set this up? I'm going to make the character go to sleep. I mean, I'm getting drowsy just sitting here talking about it, if that gives you any sort of idea as to how the receiving or the reception of this idea is going to go in the publication side. So, yeah, not the best tool to use right off the bat. Aim for something stronger. Aim for something more deliberate. Aim for something that sets you up to succeed long term. Great first question. Let's head over to question 2, where we're going to get a bit of a change. Hey, John, how do I know when I've gotten enough feedback from beta readers and I should transition back to writing? So first of all, we have to figure out how many beta readers you need, because that's going to determine when you have enough feedback. If you have, let's say, 1 beta reader, clearly the time to go back to writing is when that 1 beta reader has given you all the information you've asked of them. And presumably you've paid that beta reader, or at least given them beer money or a pizza, or promised to take their dog for a walk, or you've offered to do the dishes 2 nights a week. You've made some kind of plan to compensate them in some way for their effort. Because nobody likes to have their time taken advantage of. And nobody should be exploited like that just because you want to know if somebody else likes your book. You should be willing to trade for that information. They're going to do some work to get there. They're not just reading and saying, oh, I liked it, because that's what a crappy beta reader would do. The point of a beta reader also isn't there to do the editing for you. That's what an editor does. A beta reader is there to give you that sort of first impression, but also help you address questions you may have about how your story comes across to other people. So you need to be able to provide some kind of questionnaire, some kind of structure for those beta readers, like, hey, what did you think about this character arc? What do you think of the plot twist? What do you think of this and that? Something like a Google form to really help interrogate these things and not just sit with oh, it was really nice. I liked it. It was okay. Yeah, it was good. I didn't mind it. You want to dig deep, and that means you're going to have to push your beta reader. This is a business relationship first and foremost. So you get to ask them tough questions, or what you perceive to be tough questions. You get to press them and be specific so that they're not on the hook for something more than like, it was good, leave me alone, I don't know what you're saying. Give them something, help them, lead them so that they can help you succeed. And when you have collected that information from all your beta readers, and you've started to read it, and you've assessed it in terms of how functional it can be for you, because the information they give you is going to fall into a couple categories, right? There's going to be stuff that outright, flat out does not work for you. So you don't have to put that in. You know, they're going to tell you, oh man, it'd be totally sick, bro, if you had like a talking seagull in your story, or if that lady transformed into a car, and you're trying to tell like a science fiction story or a romance novel or something. It would be a completely sick thing, dude, if like, you know, that lady transformed into a car, but that's not the thing we're doing here. So some of that information, some of that story suggestion, some of that writing idea that totally doesn't apply and isn't about to apply, well, we can just yeet that out the window. It's nice, thanks so much for it, but you know what? It's not for us. Next category of stuff is the stuff that's like just not helpful and not nice. Now, hopefully you have a good relationship with your beta readers, so you're not going to see too much of this, but this is the stuff where you like hand it out to a writing group and somebody decides they're going to be like the jerk of the group, and they're going to come down really hard because they want to like flex and they want to tell you like how much they know and they want to be a big deal and they want the spotlight on them. So they're going to try and really drag you over the coals when you write. And that stuff can be ultimately discouraging. You get somebody who's got like a real stick rectally, and man, I had to get clever on that one. You know, they've just really got this agenda and this axe to grind with you, so they're going to make it more complicated and kind of bloviate everything, and that's not helpful. So we can discount that stuff too. Where we fall into a gray area is the stuff that's kind of sort of helpful, but ultimately leads you to have to make a decision if you want to incorporate it. You could incorporate it, but it might mean you got to roll your sleeves up and do some rewriting. And it might mean you have to challenge some assumptions and get rid of some stuff that you were attached to and, you know, poke things with a stick, and it can be kind of messy that way, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it might have to happen. And then the fourth group of feedback is the stuff where it just raves. It's just, oh my God, this is fantastic. Don't change a thing. I really liked this, and this. However many things, whatever many things. And that's the stuff that helps just confirm what you're liking. When you've gotten all the feedback from however many beta readers, and honestly, you should have more than one and maybe less than 7, you know, about a half dozen at most, usually 2 to 4 is a pretty nice number for most people to collect, and it gives you enough of a scope in terms of information you're looking for. Once you get all that information and once you've sort of sorted it into its piles and you're trying to decide what you're going to incorporate versus what you're not, because remember, you don't have to incorporate any of this. You can just say, hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. You know, here's the money I owe you. Here's the pizza. Here's this. Here's that. Here's the deal we've made for, you know, this work you've done. But you don't have to take all their advice. You can take a little, you can take none, you can take whatever degree you want. It's your work first and foremost. But once you've collected all the information and sifted through it and seen how the new material they're suggesting would affect or influence your current existing material, then you transition back to writing. In that interim stage where you're waiting on beta readers or where you're still going through information, don't write. Yeah, I said it. Don't write. Don't do that. Good evening. Hello. Thank you for coming. It's really nice to have you here. Thanks for coming. It's really good to see you. Welcome back. The reason why I just said, hey, don't write while you're collecting feedback is because it is possible, not necessarily likely, but certainly possible, that the changes you're making trying to anticipate the feedback you get are only going to complicate the situation you've got going on with the feedback. So here's an example. This is something that happened to a client of mine. They sent their stuff out for some, 2 or 3 people to read. While they were waiting for that feedback, they got a pretty clear idea that, everybody's going to complain about the love interest. Everybody's going to complain about the protagonist's love interest. So what I'm going to do while I'm waiting for the feedback is rewrite the entire love triangle. Just going to strip it out of the book, put it back together, make it a whole new thing, add some extra stuff to it. And while they were doing all that rewriting, the feedback from the beta readers came in, and everybody, all the beta readers were like, I love this love triangle. It was fantastic. Don't change a thing. But the writers, up to their ears in reconstruction. And they didn't really like the idea of, I don't want to get rid of this new thing I just added. Now I got to find a way to incorporate my stuff. That's why in that period where you're waiting for beta reader feedback to come in, don't write. Wait for the possible changes. Then come back to the writing with your most organized plan ahead of you. Just wait. Just I don't know, play a video game or something. Have a cup of tea. Go walk the dog. Get some exercise. See if you can loosen your hamstrings. I don't know. Do something. But you don't automatically have to keep writing. And then when the feedback comes in, you'll be better off for it. Because chances are you won't be. If you already knew what the problem was when you solicited the feedback in the first place, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by soliciting that feedback unless you just wanted confirmation that a thing didn't work. But if that's the case, you knew you were going to rewrite it anyway. So why did you ask? But that's how you know when you've got enough. Enough feedback is when you're able to sift out the actionable stuff from the inactionable stuff. And that's why you keep your number of beta readers low. And that's why you keep the number of total instances of beta reading low. Usually no more than 2 rounds is plenty. Because the first round sets you up, gives you some stuff to revise and work on and stuff. And then you bring it back and you say, hey, look, I made these changes. What do you think now? By and large, unless you've, somehow made the story more complicated or added more bells and whistles, and decided to reinvent the wheel to some degree, you've been working on the things, and only those things, that they said needed work. So it should, in theory, be better off for that second round. And past that, aren't you just kind of dragging your feet? Aren't you just kind of finding a reason to not go forward? Because you can just keep keeping in beta reading feedback forever. You don't have to, if you're expecting someone to say, it's perfect, finally, like how many people need to tell you that it's good enough before you tell yourself it's good enough and go forward? You don't need that much beta reader exposure. You're not an app developer, unless your day job is, but you're not like producing something that's going out to like critically impact millions. You're writing a book. It's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. You can't make it perfect. It's not expected to be perfect. You're the only one who thinks it needs to be perfect in order to be good enough. And I'm the professional here talking into this microphone, telling you it both will never be perfect and it never has to be perfect. So don't feel like you've got to take it to beta readers 6 times. Twice is fine. Keep your beta reader numbers small. Keep things moving. and move towards your goal. I know it's scary. I know it's hard, but it does get easier the more frequently you do it. You just have to keep trying. But I would prefer, as a favor to me, what you could do is really make an effort not to come up with more and exciting excuses to not go forward. So don't feel like you've got to sit in beta reading space really honestly longer than you need to. Great question. Let's go do one more. Yes, perfectionism. It's kind of a theme in a few of these questions tonight. Question number 3. How do I know when I need a writing coach? What an excellent question. This one should have made the list for last week. I don't really know why it didn't, but it's here now, and that's the important thing. So here's how you know. We have to make a distinction between writing coach and editor, because not all editors are writing coaches, and not all writing coaches are editors. And there are not many of us who do both. I do both, but they are very different jobs. They have some overlap in terms of with writers, I need sometimes to do both, but you don't really do both at the same time. An editor works with the manuscript, the single thing in front of them. And maybe it helps maybe the editor helps lay the groundwork for subsequent manuscripts down the road. But the writing coach addresses the stuff of the author, not necessarily the pages, but how the writer is approaching perfectionism, for instance, or scheduling, or deadlines, or long-term marketing plans, or motivation and accountability, or just generally answering the not specific to the manuscript writing questions that come up. Like, hey, John, should I totally absolutely listen to everybody on the internet? Should I really participate in contests that don't really seem to have a clear benefit to me? Do I really need to go down this path? Should I really pay all this money for a class when I don't entirely think it's going to do what I want it to do? Those are writing coach kind of things. So if you're looking for an asset, a professional asset that can help you become a better writer, independent or separate from the actual words on the page specifically, if you just want to get into a better writer suit, vibe, whatever you want to call it, that's where you need the writing coach. If you're looking for somebody who's going to come along and go, hey, I've got this manuscript, help me make this manuscript into a book, that's what you need the editor for. See the distinction? The writing coach is going to make you a better writer. The editor is going to make you a better author. The fusion of the two, to me at least, seems to make the most sense. That's why I do both. But it really comes down to whether or not the manuscript is an issue. Now, I'm going to tell you a fun fact, something that you've probably figured out just by me describing everything. A lot of writing coach clients need an editor down the road. So it really helps that it's one-stop shopping, essentially. Fancy that. So it all sort of works out in the end. But yeah, the coach is for the writer, the editor's for the manuscript. That's the shortest shorthand to think about. And if you're looking for accountability, if you're looking for somebody to help motivate you, if you're looking for somebody to help answer your questions, if you're looking for somebody to help, sort out the process you have for writing, if you're trying to deal with some writer's block, if you're trying to figure out when to make time in your busy ass day to put the words on the page, that's all writing coach stuff. That's hello, hi. It's delightful. You've come at a good moment. If you're looking for somebody to say like, hey, how do I make chapter 4 suck less? Or how do I figure out how to make the tension more tense? That's the editor. That's the difference. Get it? Cool. Cool. All right. Let's hold for a second. Any questions? Twitch? YouTube? Zoom? Questions? Else we will march on to question number 4. And I will put more water in my face. Dinner was good. But dinner was a little saltier than I expected. It is, in fact, Wednesday. I had this experience where I spent most of yesterday thinking, I thought yesterday was Monday, even though Monday was Monday. And yeah, I've been sort of thrown off. Now, I'm going to tell you that my Thursday is a little wild. So I wouldn't mind if Wednesday was just Wednesday a little bit longer, but it is what it is and it be what it be. Double Mondays are the worst. I don't know. I'm okay with Mondays. I'm okay with Wednesdays, really. My tough days seem to be like Tuesdays and Thursdays, just because they kind of drag a little for me, but that's just me. But anyway, yes, today is Wednesday. It is the 13th of October, and it's wonderful to see all of you. Thank you for being here. Questions? Zoom? Twitch? Anybody? Questions? Else we will march on to question number 4, which I think is the question where I'm going to use my one good piece of profanity. Nope, that's 3. Here's 4. John, how do I break the habit of using food metaphors to describe skin tone and color or other characteristics? First of all, good job not being a racist. That's wonderful. I'm very happy for you. Good job not objectifying or fetishizing other human beings, and good job seeing them as more than something you consume or use. I'm very, very excited for you. There is a whole giant world of growth and maturity awaiting you now that you've decided to not consider people in terms of how you can, control them or dictate terms of existence to them. Good job. First step. Made a decision. Awesome. Real proud of you. How do you break the habit, though? Well, you really just make the effort every time you have to describe somebody or a thing or an object or an activity or whatever it is you're trying to describe. If your first instinct is to food it up for whatever reason, honestly, what I'm going to tell you is it's going to sound a little weird, but I really want you to give this a try, okay? If your first instinct is to food it up, I want you to say it out loud to yourself, like verbally out loud. I don't care if you're in a coffee shop. I don't care. Maybe get a snack. Yeah, you could be hungry. I suppose you could be hungry. That's fair. But really, I'm gonna put a little bit of a twist on this. I want you to say it out loud to yourself, quietly, like this, so that really you're aware that you're the one saying it. And then once you've said it out loud, I don't want you to write it down. I want you to go out of your way to come up with a different way to do it. And you're going to do that in increasing volume. So you're going to say that food metaphor louder and louder until you are very uncomfortable with the idea, because understand how uncomfortable that feels. That's how the reader feels to read it every time you've done it so far. So now that we've visited the uncomfortable space you put the reader in, now we can do something about it. How do you break the habit? You make a conscious effort to find other ways to describe people. It really is not that difficult. It's just some ingrained racism. It's colonialism run amok. You can do something about it. It's not that difficult. You just have to make the effort. And I know for the vast majority of people, making that effort, it's a little difficult. And then they'll throw up any number of excuses or privileges or insecurities or whatever's. But ultimately, you just like being a racist. I'm sorry. It's unfortunate, but yeah, you don't have to keep doing this. You can do better. You just have to choose to do better. So let's make you uncomfortable first. Then you'll understand that you need to do better. Use the whole breadth of the English language to express what you're trying to say. That's why it's there. Just here's my one curse. Fucking do better. Let's go on to the next question. Why does it take a publisher 30 to 60 days to reply back on a submission? Ooh, okay. We're gonna pull the curtain back, and like I said on Monday, I'm gonna show you how the sausage gets made. Ready? It really doesn't. But let's think about this. You get an email in your inbox, okay? Assuming it's not like this incredible, grim, heavy news, like, oh my God, you're gonna go. It's about those long martini lunches. They don't do those so many. They don't do that so much anymore. It used to be, totally used to be, but now it's more about just like long stretches of browsing on your phone. But let's lay this out. Let's work our way through this. You get an email in your inbox, right? It's not necessarily outright junk mail. It's not random company trying to get you to sign up to their newsletter or whatever. But it's a piece of mail and it's there. Now, by and large, you and I get, I don't know how many pieces of mail a day. 100, 200, including all the junk mail, including all the sales flyers and all the newsletters that we sign up intending to read and then don't, all that stuff, maybe a couple hundred, right? Now, imagine getting 2 to 3 times that a day. Okay? So we've already got a backlog building, and we got a backlog building pretty quickly. So maybe what could have been done all in one day to try and reach, maybe not inbox 0, but certainly inbox low digit count, it might take you a day or 2 or 3 days maybe. Let's really like fluff this up, yeah? Now, imagine just for a second that it's not just an email you have to read, but there's also extra stuff. It's not just like a 2-paragraph like, hey, here's what, here are the plans for Thursday. If you could just bring napkins and chips, that'd be super cool. Thanks, peace. Let's say it's something more complicated where you've got to really deliberate. You've really got to make decisions. So we're just adding extra time to that submission. The problem is that it's not actually 30 days. You would have to have a backlog in the hundreds, if not thousands. Now, if you were a one-person shop, if you were the only submissions person at your small press publisher, yeah, I could see it taking a couple extra weeks because you've got so many other responsibilities and so many other things to do. But if you are one of 6 people assigned to collect things and put them in a spreadsheet, and you are reading, let's say, 2 to 3 manuscripts a day, because you don't have to read the whole thing, right? You can read 20 to 30 pages and make your snap decision. We do it all the time as humans. We look at menus and decide if we're going to have lunch there. We, look at the blurb on TV and decide if we're going to watch a show. We can make snap decisions. So where does this 30 to 60 day nonsense come in? Well, it accounts for a number of people reading the same thing and coming to a collective decision. It accounts for abject laziness because people don't want to do their work at work. Do you like doing all your stuff at your day job some days? No, sometimes there's other stuff. Sometimes you get pulled into meetings. Sometimes you just really want to fall down a rabbit hole because somebody somewhere's got to take an angle grinder to something. See what I did there? There's always something pulling you in a million billion different directions, and sometimes email gets stuffed to the side. But by and large, 30 to 60 days is a big cushion to help set up a situation where you were dependent on their answer before the writer goes forward. It's a control scheme. It's about flexing a power dynamic. Because let's suppose for a second we reversed things, right? Let's suppose you took 30 to 60 days to reply back to a publisher. The system would grind to a halt. Why? Because they need your quick snap, snap, snap obedience to comply with their power dynamic. Because they're the ones in charge, because they're holding all the strings, because they're the ones with the money, because they're the ones with the big fancy title. They're the ones who have been trotting out your dream in a hoop for you to jump through. So they can set whatever terms they want. 30 to 60 is nothing. In the throes of major lockdown, in the throes of pandemic, that number went to 90 to 120 pretty easily. But really, realistically, it takes about half as long, and the rest of the time people just wait. How do I know this? Because I used to do it. I managed people who did it. I was somebody who did it. You make a decision on a manuscript over a long weekend, and then you're like, I'll get to it later. I'll get to it later. I'll write them back later. They're going to get a rejection letter. The vast majority of these things get rejected because we want to give the impression of, being really selective, but it comes down to We just didn't like it. It's a personal decision, and then it's a collective personal decision. I should also point out that if you get a reply quickly, like a real quick one, like you send it in on a Tuesday and you get a reply on like Wednesday morning, they probably didn't even read it. They skimmed it, looked for some key things to maybe could have potentially provoked some interest, didn't see what they wanted, made a couple snap decisions, and bounced you right out. Happens oodles of times. How do I know that? Because I did it. I managed people who did it. I did it myself. It's how that part of the business works. But the number's arbitrary. When you get up into like the founding or management status of these things, you get to set that number. I've worked at places where the number was 45. I've worked at places where the number was 200 because there was such a backlog. I've worked at places where the number was like 10. You just pick a number that sounds good, that's going to buy you enough time based on what you think it'll take to get all the stuff you need done. 30 to 60 is nice and round. Everybody on that side of the line is aware of how much stress that puts on a writer. Everybody knows. It's no big secret. Oh my God, writers live and die waiting to hear back. They're crushed when they get rejection. Some places glorify that. I'm skipping badly? I have no indication here on my end. Everything here is delightful and nice and neat. I don't know what to tell you. So far, so good. Well, I'm recording. Worst case scenario, I will load it up on YouTube. Back to my point. Yeah, it's just an arbitrary number. Sorry to disappoint you. There are ways there are back doors you can navigate to kind of get through everything. There are ways to shortcut some of that. There's ways to make better impressions. Go see a writing coach, go get an editor. You'll learn all about them. But by and large, it's a number they set up so that they can maintain their power dynamic and keep you subordinate and waiting. Great question. Let's move on to 6. 6. The first gentle advice question of the evening. Now, if you're not sure what gentle advice is the non-threatening stuff where I sound more calm and tranquilo. It's supposed to be delivered without me really like blowing a gasket or screaming or something. And sometimes people like to sneak in really tough questions so that I have to answer them in this tone of voice. And sometimes it's just me having a genuine moment with somebody. They're some of my favorite questions to answer of the evening because they get this harp. And I love that harp. So, gentle advice. I'm scared to get started marketing my work. How should I get started? I'm going to ask you a question, and you don't need to answer right away. If you're here, you don't need to answer in chat. It's up to you. If you can, if you want, it's fine. What exactly are you scared of? I'm willing to bet it's one of a few things. You're probably scared of being rejected. Somebody saying like, "Oh, that's stupid." Or being ignored, you putting it out there and nobody noticing. Or you're scared because it just seems really complicated. And yeah, there are some ways to make marketing very complicated. And you can do them. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no, it doesn't always have to be complicated, but it's an option. Just like so many other things we do when we create stuff. If you're afraid of the outright rejection, like you're going to put your stuff out there and they're going to, this is awful. Understand that most of the time, the vast majority of that time, that opinion about it being awful does not refer back to the material. It refers back to the marketing you've done. For example, if I tell you that my dinner tonight was kind of, it was okay. It was supposed to be more like chili and it ended up more like soup and it was a little salty. And it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. It wasn't like, oh man, you guys got to try this recipe. When I offer you, hey, do you want some? Before I show you the picture, before I, hand you the ladle or whatever, based on my words alone, you might very well go, no, I'm not really feeling soup, John, which is fine. But the marketing I've done is the thing you're rejecting, not necessarily the chili, because it's possible that if you decided like, hey, I'm going to check this out, you might think it's delicious, and that's fine. But more often than not, the thing that gets rejected, whether we're talking about an email, a query letter, a pitch, a Facebook paragraph, an Amazon sales page paragraph, just a random explainer with you talking to your two friends, whatever, it's the marketing that's going to be rejected first and foremost, because they're not going to read the rest of the stuff. They're not going to open those attachments. They're not going to scroll down. They're not going to, check it out or try a second time if the first thing they looked at didn't really engage them. So if you're scared of being rejected, it puts a premium, put a gold star next to the idea that your marketing needs to be strong and evocative, which is something you can learn to do. And everybody's first bouts of marketing are terrible, the same way that your first draft compared to your later drafts is terrible. It's something you get better over time with. Now, if you're afraid of silence, you're going to put all this out there and you're going to get crickets. I don't have crickets. Linus, I need to get a cricket sound effect. We're going to have to prioritize that for tomorrow. So if you're expecting crickets, because, oh my God, who am I? No one notices who I am. This is just pointless. What am I going to do? Here's what you do. Make sure you've got some people who you know will see it. Even if it's like 2 people. Hey, I loaded my thing. Hey, check this pitch out. It still counts. It's okay. Just because you didn't, and I was just literally talking about this about 5 minutes before we started recording today. I would love to reach a point in this after, all these chats and all this time where there's just a billion people. And I'm talking about a ton of folks, and I've got to get mods, and I've got to do all this and that and the other. And I'm just sitting back and answering questions and whatever. And at the same time, I also don't want it to be like that, because I want to be able to individually talk to people and address their questions and say, hey, and know exactly who we're talking about. So there's always this balance, this idea of being seen versus wanting to stay hidden, or being aware of things and versus having some kind of shadow or anonymity. And how you get around that, how you mitigate that, is a middle ground based entirely in, well, you get to control who sees your stuff. You only have one question. That's fine. You can have questions. That's totally fine. We'll get there in a second. Let me finish this. If after that, you know who you're going to talk to, you can control to a degree who's going to come in the door, to a degree, because you can't always do it for everything. The internet's a big place. But you can at least establish that at some point in this stuff, you're not going to be alone. You're not going to get rejected. And everybody sort of knows that your first marketing is not going to be as good as the stuff you're doing later down the road. We all sort of know what we're getting into. We all know what's coming, and we all get there together. So where should you start? Figure out your message. How are you going to connect your idea, whatever your story is? How are you going to get that to excite another person? You can't just tell them the plot. You can't just say, okay, well, there's this princess and a horse and a pigeon and then a sword, because they're not going to know what to do with all the facts you're giving them. But you got to take those things and package them up, put a little bow on it, figure out how to make those things sound appealing. And no, you're not going to know exactly what's going to make it appealing. You're going to have to try a couple different approaches. Well, what if I talk about it this way? What if I talk about it that way? And be willing to be bad at it. Not because you're going to be bad at it forever, just because you're bad at it right now. Remember the first time you ever did a thing, like tie your shoes? I was terrible at tying shoes. I was terrible at tying shoes for 2 years, until all of a sudden, one day, I just got it. I was suddenly making bunny ears and twisting them, and everything was cool. But for a long time, I had like bunny ear and like loose shoelace, and I'm trying to spin things. It was a nightmare. At one point, I would tie my finger to my shoe. Like it was hard, and it took practice. So how the hell do you even remember how bad you were at tying shoes? Because it traumatized me, and I grew up in an abusive household where all my failures were screamed at me constantly. I totally remember being bad at tying shoes in elementary school. Yeah. I absolutely remember that. I got screamed at for not being able to tie my shoes faster. Happened a lot. It's a thing. But anyway, you just practice over time. So just pick some point where you want to practice. Okay, I'm going to work on my pitch. So you start learning how to make a pitch, and it sucked. and you just keep making your pitch. I'm going to try it this way. Nah, that felt very clumsy coming out of my face. All right, I'm going to keep at it. I'm going to practice. I'm going to find some resources to get better at this. I'm going to get some help. I'm going to go to a pitch workshop. I'm going to listen to a thing on the YouTube. I'm going to download something. I'm going to try. That's what you work towards. That's what we're trying to do. Where do you get started? You pick one thing where you think you'll be eventually very good at, and you just practice. Like a Rocky montage, right? Like we start off and things are kind of like, oh man, how the hell is Rocky going to chase the chicken and run up the mountain and fight in the snow and then outrun some children? And next thing you know, like we're 2 minutes into the song and Rocky's like running homoerotically with his best friend, and then everybody's happy because we're splashing in the surf, but nobody's kissing. And then next thing you know, we're fighting like the Punisher. We just start somewhere. And then we build on it and get better over time. Great question. All right. Now over here, somebody, I think in Twitch, had a question. So if you got a question, fire away. While I drink more water. It really was saltier than I thought. Man. I should have put more paste in it. That's fine. Somebody had a question somewhere, didn't they? Was it you, Rob? Did you say you had a question? If not, we will march on. But I'm pretty sure Rob said he had a question. I'm pretty sure there was an emoji attached to it. Yes? No? I don't know how long the delay is here, so I'm assuming it's like 10 seconds, and then the minute I click the next thing, Rob will pop back up, which is fine. Cool. So in the interim, I'm going to move on to the next one. A technical question. Ooh. John, what's the biggest... Here we go. See? There's Rob. All right. How do you come down on the short stories versus novels camp? How do I come down on the camp? What? Are short stories a waste of time? I understand the second question. I do not understand the first question, Rob. Could you perhaps rephrase the first question while I answer the second? Are short stories a waste of time? No. Why would a short story be a waste of time? It's going to make you a better writer. It's a different skill set than a novel. You know, the same way that, you know, learning how to like prep food, you know, work with knife skills in a restaurant are totally different than, you know, plating. And they're sort of at different levels of experience and stuff. Or line cook is different than prep cook. Or how when you're learning how to drive, that's different than being a professional race car driver. So they're different skill sets, even though they're more or less in the same ballpark. But they're not a waste. Are you talking about whether or not it's bad to write them because they don't sell? So you're framing everything as being good or bad based on whether or not someone will give you money for it. I mean, that's fine if you are. It's just going to color the way I answer the question, because there's more to making art than whether or not someone will give you money for it, because sometimes art needs to be made because you have a burning desire to put an idea out into the world. What side do I fall into? Is it better to focus on short stories if you're trying to get published or represented? It's better, Rob, to focus on whatever tools are going to allow you to complete work and make it available. Is it a waste of time because you're trying to get published or represented? No. It's harder. Like, it's a harder thing to do. It requires, you know, you can't really get... It's not if it's like a short story is short. It says so in the name. So you've got to be able to be a bit more concise. You've got to be a bit more organized in how you deploy the story architecture. You can't exactly make a short story that's 100,000 words. That's not how big a short story is. You've gone too far. But it is not a waste of time in terms of publication or representation. It's just different. Now, as to whether or not you'll be able to find a pimp/editor who reps short stories, well, that's just a matter of Googling. But it's not a waste of time to produce them. And it's not exactly like, oh, well, if I just stop typing at this point, it's a short story, but then if I keep writing more, it's a novel. They are totally different skill sets. I'm wondering if the short story market is still viable. Yeah. It's a market. It's always there. You can always engage with it. If you're wondering if it's viable in terms of are people buying short stories, it depends on how you're marketing them. If your end goal is publication and representation, you need to figure out what quality of work, regardless and independent of genre or size, is going to get you that representation. You're not going to get representation solely and strictly because, oh, you're a short story person. I'm a pimp looking for a short story author. It doesn't matter what the short story is. That's not how that works. That's not how that works at all. It comes down to, is this writing good? Can I, the pimp, sell this writing to someone else? And then they can turn it into a book because I, the pimp, don't really have anything else to do in this other than take a cut of your hard work and a cut of somebody else's hard work and stand in the middle and say I did something important because I'm essentially just the person in the middle. Like, that's how you get repped. That's how you get published. Is your idea in a strong enough shape that someone else will want to say yes to it? It's a different thing. It's sort of like saying I have one of those itty bitty little like rent-a-car, those e-cars, versus I drive a big ass giant truck. They're still vehicles. You still drive them, but they drive very differently. They serve different purposes. We use them in different ways. Short stories are viable and they're used in different ways than big giant novels. But if your fundamental goal is I just want to be published, well, what are you going to publish? I feel like I write short stories better, but if I want to make writing my career, I feel like I have to do novels. No. I mean, I understand your feeling. It is not connected to anything, though, but I understand what you're feeling. The idea is that you're looking at a very small scale of the traditional publishing landscape and seeing a number of people very successful as novelists. You are then, on some level, interpreting that novels are more successful because that's who you see as having more success. And the issue isn't that they're writing novels. The issue is how you're defining that success. Because you're writing a different thing. A novel is going to succeed in a way that's different than a short story. It's going to sell to a different base. It's going to sell a different number. It's going to move a certain way. It's going to be marketed a different way. It's apples and oranges, even though they both contain words and have titles and covers and stuff. If you feel like you do short stories better, publish short stories. If you feel you can write a novel, write a novel. Don't do it just because you think one is going to be more publishable, like on its face, like, it's a novel, it's automatically better. Because it's not. It's whatever your best work is that's better. It's a different skill set. It's the difference between being a sprinter and being a marathoner. You're both runners, but one's built for shorter distance. With submitting a short story to magazines, Cam asks, would submitting a short story to magazines that fit the content help move your work towards representation? Yes. Because then you could say, hey, my stuff's been in this magazine. Writing credits often go a long way in query letters. Now, the question is whether or not the magazine you're submitting to is like a magazine that other human beings see, or if it's a magazine in the same way that, like, when I was 22, I invented an office and an address to put on a resume so that I could sell towels and couches. But, getting a writing credit somewhere it won't automatically guarantee it because there are no automatic guarantees, but it can certainly help make your business appearance more prevalent. It can do something to help assist the decision to represent you or not. It cannot necessarily mean that you will automatically do better, but having a writing credit and demonstrating that your writing is of a caliber that somebody somewhere is going to publish something can certainly give you a leg up. As for whether or not the book you've written, whatever it is, short story or novel, is worth publishing is a different issue. Because you can get published and printed in magazines and stuff and not be able to, like, write an effective novel yet. Everything's connected but not entirely independent. Like Reader's Digest or Sci-Fi Monthly. Yeah, there's a magazine for every genre. Yeah, there's multiple magazines. There's multiple outlets for just about every genre. Some of them still print physical magazines. Some of them are all digital. You know, you can use Submission Grinder, Google it, and it'll really help sort out who's available for what to what degree. But yeah, publishing like that, getting credits like that, is definitely an asset when it comes to looking at traditional routes of publication, because then you feel like less of an unknown. Though it's still going to come down to, is this thing, this manuscript being read, is that thing worth selling? It's always going to come down to that in the end. Good questions, though, guys. Good questions. Love them. Awesome. Awesome. Here, have some air horns. Oh my God, we're giving out subs. This is awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the sub. Thank you. This is great. We're humming along now. I'm going to go back and answer the 7th question, though, because it just occurred to me that we never got to the answer. So let's do the 7th question. If you have more questions, fire away. But I'm going to do the 7th question in the interim. What's the biggest benefit of an epistolary format? Oh, man. And yes, Rob, I do see your question. We're going to get to that, but I want to talk about epistolaries for a minute. If you don't know what an epistolary format is, it's, imagine people writing correspondence to each other. It's letters and emails and text messages and telegrams and recorded transmissions of some kind. And it's all documented, like a diary or multiple diaries. Dracula is epistolary. It's one of the more famous epistolary versions, because instead of it being a strict narrative following one character, the epistolary's biggest benefit is that it gives you a breadth of scope. It gives you more flexibility to jump from character to character. It gives you the ability to turn a particular protagonist or a particular member of a protagonist ensemble into a sole lead character, so that for a while we can follow Jonathan Harker through Transylvania. And for a while we can go talk about Mina and Lucy, and then we can jump over to Van Helsing, and then we can, yes, World War Z is also, it's pretty currentish. I'd say it's within the last 20 years. I'd call that more current. World War Z is also an epistolary, because the other, thank you so much for cheering. I've only had 2 people cheer. This is awesome. Thank you. You're my second cheerer. Sweet. I don't know what that does, but it just makes me happy. So epistolary, in addition to giving you a lot of flexibility for getting your protagonists in focus, it also lets you tell a bigger scope of story, because we can jump all around the globe and we can jump all around the world of our story, or all around to different people in different locations to whatever degree, and give different sides of things. Oh, this is what's happening over here. That's what's happening over there. It's a great format, and it really works in a lot of genre. Now, sometimes for some genre, you're going to have to tweak it a little bit. In something like detective fiction, the epistolary format has to be fiddled with, because usually there's a single protagonist moving in a single story vector. But by and large, it's pretty functional, and you can use it for loads of things with a little bit of adaptation. It's also still a modern thing. I know we just talked about Dracula from 200-something years ago, and we just talked about, World War Z from 20 years ago, but you can include text messages and WhatsApp chats and Signal chats and Twitch streams and all that stuff. It's all correspondence, and that's the main function of it. Gives me a couple bucks. Thank you. I'm always down for a couple bucks. Virtual high five, sir. I got to figure out how to come up with a thank you graphic. I'll come up with that. But yeah, epistolary format allows you to play with the general structure of story. If you're ever wondering, hey, what's a great way I can tell the story in a way that maybe people aren't expecting, take a look at an epistolary format. I think it'll really get your wheels turning. It's a great question. All right, let's go back and answer Rob's other question. In my experience, or others' experience, well, I can only speak to mine, Rob. So in my experience, are print magazines given more weight than digital? No, because it's 2021, nearly 2022. If this were 2006 6, then yes, because publishing generally tends to be 10 to 15 years behind in a lot of significant ways. While the people in publishing are fairly, especially in the traditional sphere where you guys seem to be focused, which is fine. But the traditional sphere as a collective seems to be about a decade behind, if not more so. We'll talk about that in a second. But the collective seems to be about a decade behind, even if the people within are very, or attempting to be very current. It can often feel like you are trying to pull an ocean liner with, an extension cord in order to get things moving. I have been in meetings within, just, like 8-9 months before the pandemic. I was in meetings where people were still debating whether or not digital production of files, making a Kindle version was still a really viable strategy. I mean, it is now because there's a paper and cardboard shortage, but you want to really think about, the system is really old and slow. What are you going to do individually to move forward? Digital is going to be the way to go. How beneficial is plus content on Amazon in terms of sales? I don't have a universal answer for you, Ross. It's a great question. Generally, not as significant as everybody wants it to be, has been so far the experience I'm aware of. Oh, I got a high point? Sweet. I was very pleased. Thank you, Jesse, for pointing that out. The plus content, to the best of my knowledge, as of literally today is the last time I talked to somebody who makes extensive Amazonian, is that the way I want to say it? Amazonian work. They do a lot on Amazon, and they're not seeing such a significant uptick in sales or a significant uptick in availability or visibility that they're not already accomplishing through other marketing channels. So it's not like a huge plus, especially if you're pushing into a crowded field. Like if I talked to a romance author, and oh man, romance on Amazon and Kindle is, it's probably the densest packed arena for writing right now again. It used to be sci-fi fantasy, and then romance the two of them kind of chase each other for most crowded digital genre. And romance, I think, for whatever reason, right now seems to be slightly in the lead, but I've not seen enough data to suggest that, oh yeah, you want to go this way. You not just you specifically, I mean in general. You totally want to put some eggs in that basket. It of course has the potential benefit, but I would not say it's a must yet. Something about it doesn't click with me, or the overall, not yet. I'd say not yet. That's in part my gut, and in part just a general sense of I haven't seen other people rave, or the few people I have seen rave about it are raving about it, or they're attributing success to it that it shouldn't. It's not the reason why they're doing really well is because they have 5,000 people on their newsletter, or that they happen to catch a real popular TikTok at the moment. There's more to its success than just, oh, by the way, I also have this thing. So I think it will be beneficial. I think it will be a thing down the road. Thank you so much for following. I really appreciate it. I think I follow you on Twitter. I've seen that name before. Thank you so much. It's delightful. Thank you for being here. You're amazing. Ross, just for you, I will talk to somebody tomorrow when I get back in the office, and I will get you a more definite, concrete answer. Because I feel like I gave you kind of a broad answer, and I want to give you something more specific. Ooh, ice cube. Sweet. Great question, though. I'll work on it. But for now, I don't think it's going to give you a significant boost the same way other marketing would, both in terms of what you're specifically writing and how you're approaching it, but also just in general. I don't think it's the big boon yet. Yeah, I think there's more to it, and there's going to be more to it. All right. Other questions, issues, comments, etc. Yeah, you're super welcome, man. Absolutely, my pleasure. I love answering questions like that. All right. Shall we move on to 8? Do we have other questions? Twitch? Zoom? YouTube? Oh, man. I've also got a notification that this is my second gifted sub. So thank you for gifting more. That's amazing. You guys are great. I love this. This fills me with joy. I'm gonna eat cookies later. I'm telling you, right? I mean, they're like cardiac conscious cookies, but they're vanilla. They're really tasty. So yeah, thanks you guys. You're making this awesome. You're saving my life. All right. Shall we move on? Other questions though? Question 8. I get this one a lot, and I've been putting it off because I couldn't always find like a nice way to say the answer. Is there a reason? Here's the question. Is there a reason you don't answer more questions about art and comics? Yeah. There's 2 reasons. 1, I don't get asked that many questions about art and comics. And 2, artists and comic people very seldom come and hang out at this chat for more than like 10 seconds. So they're not around for me to give them answers to things. It's sort of a mutual thing. I don't get enough stuff in that area. They're not around, so we don't really cross paths. It is not like an outright, all those people can suck eggs. We just don't cross paths yet. If you have questions about art and comic, by all means, I've edited some. I'm happy to answer to the best of my ability, but I just don't get enough questions about art and comics. Sorry. Good question, though. And yeah, if I had more, I'd totally answer them. As you can tell, if you're hanging out here, I will answer just about damn near any question somebody asks. I like answering questions. It helps me feel loved, damn it. All right, on we go. Shall we go to question 9? I'm looking for other questions. Did I miss anything? No, so far so good. Rock and roll. Let's go to 9. Oh, Rob's back. It's cool that Rob's back. I'm just going to give him grief. What are the drawbacks, if any, of posting your own work on your blog? Does it impact any chance of getting those works published? Oh, wait, where's my air horns? No, not the air horns. Where's the other one? That one. All right. All right, listen to me very, very carefully. Listen to me very, very carefully. This is really, really important, okay? If you post your work to a website or a blog, it is published. You've already published it. You posted it somewhere. It's published. So if it impacted your chance of getting it published, well, you posted it. It's published. Check. If you're talking about posting something on a blog and then trying to package that up and send it off later somewhere else, the internet has this thing called an archive, and they will send someone to go look. Even if you delete the post from your stuff, yeah, people are pretty savvy. Once it's published somewhere, it's published. Just because you published it on a blog with a readership of you, well, good news, you published it. You're a published author. Congratulations. Here's a hat. But yeah, don't. I mean, that like idea of, oh man, I can publish it on my blog and then everybody's going to read my blog and then I'll publish it. Like, that works in rare cases where like the person definitely has a following, or it's 2003 or something, and we really have like some edginess going on, some real shock jock appeal. But by and large, now we've all been doing this long. Yeah, once you publish it on a website, it's published. So anybody who's like, I put stuff on my blog, hey, you're a published author. Now just put eyes on your blog. Good job. Good question, though. Thank you for letting me break out the red alert horn. An art comics question. Do you know anything about the Dark Horse submission process? Other than I know people complain about it, I do not know any of the specifics. How much of their idea concept does the creator own? I don't know. I can speak to what it was 20 years ago, when I was still in New York publishing circles, and I dated that nice girl with the tattoo on her neck. But I cannot say for certain now. I'm assuming, given the fact that there have been 2 economic collapses between the time I dated that girl and today, that the ratio of percentage has changed things. But I know the dark horse process overall is frequently complained about. I don't know if that's because it's just rigorous or because there had been a spate of like just crappy dudes who got called out for uncomfortable stuff. But I do not know the specifics of the dark horse submission process as a whole. I imagine it's not that dissimilar from other submission processes, just that it's from dark horse, so it carries the weight and the appearance of, oh, it's dark horse, a lot like Marvel or Disney. It's a big deal because of the label on it. It's still a submissions process. It's just going to feel like a bigger deal. I don't know how much their creator owns. I know way back in the day that was individually hashed out. I don't know if I'm assuming it still is to some degree, but I imagine there's a lot less Wild West flexibility to it. I might be wrong. I do not know. Sorry. I do have another art comics question, though. Can a writer submit a script without art? Is that frowned upon? Submitted to whom? Like to a publisher? Well, if the submission windows is open, it's possible that you can submit a script without art. It happens a lot. It's not necessarily frowned on, but it depends on who you're submitting to. If you're just cold submitting things to people or companies that don't have a submission window open, the same way that a regular book publisher would, because that's how these things work, you're throwing rocks at a closed window. I mean, yeah, eventually one will, break the glass and get through, but by and large, you got to wait for the window to open for it to get in. You can submit a script without art. Generally, though, again, this seems a lot like that publishing novel short story question. Like you're only gonna do a thing that facilitates the greatest reward at the end of the day. And I really think that does a disservice to the depth of art. Yeah, so it does depend on where you submit. In my experience, I've only ever worked with artists who, less of a can and more of a should. It depends on where you're submitting. It really does depend on where you're submitting. I don't have a better answer for that. I have an honest answer. In my experience, the 9 people I've worked on for comics, 7 of which were people who tried to pitch somewhere and it didn't work, so they took their own thing and made their own comic. 2 of them, took their pitch and took their idea and moved it up the line, and it went on to be published somewhere. This was like 15 years ago. And it didn't really develop into like, oh my God, they're a long-standing X-Men artist now. That's just not how that went for them. But the path is essentially the difference. The path is essentially no different here. You're just going to wait for a submission window. You're going to roll it out, and every place is different. They set up their own rules. Please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, check the website. Really, truly, check the website. Honesty is all you hear. Well, honesty is all you should hear, especially if the kids 10. Because we would all do better if we were willing to sit with some uncomfortable or comfortable honesty. Welcome to the Writer's Chat. There's not a lot of fluff here. Mostly my cats. Good questions. I'm going to put more water in my face. And then we're going to mosey on to... Was it question 9 next? Yeah, question 9 next. First, water break. So I don't have like an intermission thing. It's not going to be a long intermission. It's going to be however long it takes me to chug this. Oh, that's good. That's delightful. Whew. All right. I want to just take a moment and say thank you to everyone here. You guys are awesome. I love all of you. It's great to see you. I love doing this. I hope you can tell, and I hope you guys come back. I'm here twice a week. Thanks for being here. You guys rule. All right. Shall we move to 9 and see what other trouble we can get into? No, that's 8, John. Press the 9 button. That's the 9 button. Should I factor in my per hour writing rate when I try to price my book? Oh, God. Oh, God. I can feel the Tech Pro vibes rolling through the monitor to me. Oh, God. Everyone, strap in. There is a school of thought. Dude, bro. There is a school of thought, dude, bro. There is a school of thought that says you need to maximize your absolute, financial victory when you provide value and content, bro. So you need to sit there and figure out, like, the overall price, the value of your book, how much it's worth, and figure out how much you would pay yourself per hour to write based on the number of total words and the number total of hours worked, plus the normal, like, average rate depending on your city, state, location, or country, and then figure out that you're supposed to be worth X number of, dollars per hour, and then factor that down some degree based on sales and vague terms like network outreach or viable idea productivity, and then all of a sudden come up with a like a 2-digit number or a 1-digit number with a decimal point and then like hangers on, and then round it up and it's supposed to be your price. It's really complicated and dumb. Like it's just dumb. It's a dumb idea. It's overly complicating things. Would you like to learn tonight, right now, however many of you? I can teach you right this minute how to price your book. You ready? This is great. It's an easy lesson. I guarantee you, if you're brand new, you cannot mess this up. You ready? Here we go. I need you to do one thing first before you get started pricing your own book. I need you to get an idea of what other books in your genre are priced. Look for a range, okay? Some are going to be $1.99, some are going to be $2.99, some are going to be 99 cents, some are going to be $3.99, some are going to be $5.49. Whatever. Look for a range, okay? Figure out that range. Write it down. I need you to do that in advance, okay? That's step 1. Ready for step 2? Things are going to get real, hang on. Things are going to get real complicated. Just take a deep breath. You have that range in front of you, right? Find a number in that range, and that's the price of your book. Yeah, that's how you price your book. Everybody else is doing $3.99? Cool. My book's about the same size as their book. I guess my shit's $3.99. And if you're about to go, but John, I think my book is $10.99. Okay, do you have an audience willing to pay $10.99 for your book? Like, off the top of your head, you think you can motivate people to drop $10 on your book, $11 on your book? If you can, cool. Totally cool. Are you legit lost, or are you just giving me grief? It's cool. You just got to tell me. But if you have that price, like, yeah, if I could sell the book for $1 million, you don't think I'd sell the book for $1 million? Do you know how many problems it would solve if I could do that? Do you know how much easier my life would be? This would be the last chat ever if I could sell a book for $1 million. I'd go buy a very small little place. I'd go live out somewhere. I'd get another cat. I'd finally buy myself a couch. Life would be good. I'd probably still not have a PS5, but I'd at least, not have to worry so much about things, right? So you look at this range and you figure, yeah, my book falls within this range in terms of size and in terms of content within the genre. I'm not writing something like super far out of field. And I think I've got an audience in place, or an outreach program to build an audience around that price point where it seems pretty doable. People are willing to spend $2.99 for me, $3.99 for me. I would abandon you for $1 million? No, I would not abandon you guys for $1 million. Now that I really think about it, honestly, if you want to know my number, I get asked this like maybe once a year, like how much would it cost for me to sell the whole business? Like if I were to give Writer Next Door up, right? I've been building this for 2 decades. If I were going to sell this off and let other people take it, how much would it cost? I'll tell you exactly how much it would cost. Real simple. I don't think I've ever mentioned this on a chat. Here's how much I would sell everything for. $999,267.47. That's my asking price for the business. Give me just under $1 billion. Do that, and I will immediately invest that money, and I will go back to school, and I will immediately start teaching like underprivileged, silenced voices in marginalized communities how to write infinitely better than the previously non-marginalized communities. And I will spend the rest of my life leading an aggressive anarcho-communist campaign of waging creative war on the establishment. All you got to do is meet my price. I want just under $1 billion, please. $1 million and another cat would be great. Just 'cause I like cats. And I'm pretty sure with $1 million I could buy a couch. And I need a new couch. So, and I could, pay back some of the people who've loaned me money for 20 years to stay afloat. So yeah, that's what's up. So should I factor my per hour writing rate? No, God, no. Why? Do you just enjoy having extra numbers? Do you enjoy the masturbatory exercise of trying to like fantasy football and money ball your creative effort? If you do, good for you. Do it. It's not going to help because at the end of the day, the rest of the market is, well, I gave you $3.50 earlier, Rob says. Yes, you did. So only 999 million to go, right? So, yeah, you don't have to go out of your way to price your book. If you want to make your book stand out, the price isn't really going to be your factor. It can be a factor, but your strongest 2 factors for affecting the transmission and production of your book are your marketing and the quality of your writing. You can control both of those things. That's where you put the emphasis. That's where you do the work. Write the best book you can. Market it in an effective way. No matter whether the price is $1.99, $2.99, $3.99, it's all the same book, and it should all be marketed the same way. You don't slack off your marketing just because you're selling it for a lower price point. Those are the 2 things that build an audience. Price is just an incentive to help confirm people who are already planning on making the decision. It just expedites it. And I'm telling you this as somebody who did drugs for many years because that's how pricing drugs works. Great question. Let's go to 10, shall we? And I got to scroll. Question 10. Why aren't more writers co-authoring publishable books? Well, okay. We have to have a moment. This should have been a gentle advice question. And honestly, at one time, it was the second gentle advice question of the night, but I made it not gentle because I like the other gentle advice question better. But here's why you don't see more co-author writer pairs at the upper end publishable level. Two big reasons, several subordinate ones. Let's start with the 2 biggies. One, it comes down to the money. Invariably splitting the advance, figuring out the contract, figuring out whose name goes first, all that sort of dissension stuff. It all sounds good in like, one day when we're published, we'll split everything 50-50. And then when that shows up, somebody gets a little puffy in the chest, as we used to say. And somebody's like, no, man, I did, 10% more than you did. I need 10% more of the advance. Or I was the one who did. Like, it turns into a contest. It turns into a shoving match. So on one level, the money gets in the way. Second issue. The quality, for the vast majority of these co-authoring partnerships, the quality is not up to a publishable standard if we're looking at larger, more traditional publishing avenues. This question was asked by somebody specifically for traditional publishing. Co-authoring invariably needs an extra layer of editing to homogenize the voice. Because you don't want, even if you're doing like, they try to be clever. Like, I'm writing two different points of view, and I'm writing A, and the other person's writing B. Haha, isn't that clever? No, you're not the first person to ever invent that idea, Doris. It's just the fact that you need to make the voice sound uniform for the reader's benefit. And while co-authoring is really fun and it's a great way to be accountable and it's a wonderful way for, hobbyist writers or hack writers to kind of slap their way through a real, performance of writing, a real appearance of like, hey, I'm doing the thing, you guys. But by and large, at the end of the day, the level of quality isn't really there, because it's, instead of being two people excelling, it's the average of the two. And it sort of waters one down or waters them both down. And then when you add on the extra need for editing, or the extra fact that a lot of co-authored stories tend to not get finished in the first place, but those that do either have a very strong dynamic in terms of the division of labor, or a very strong story structure so that they can survive the dual impact of two different people, two different intelligences, and two different egos. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things that's real fun to do, but it doesn't work in like the put on your adult pants and let's go get published level. The quality is usually your big determining factor. Improve the quality, and you can make there are co-authors, there are published people who partner together to put things out. But the bar for quality is much greater than two people just hanging out, banging out a Google Doc on their lunch break, right? Like, there's a big jump. And that jump needs to be navigated. If you're already published and you're hooking up, go for it. But by and large, if you're just two people trying to break in together, it's going to be a tough road if you're going to go the traditional route. I would consider looking at more flexible self-publishing routes, but understand that your quality is going to be a factor. Great question. Hi, John. My question. For established writers, is there an ideal release cadence traditional publishers prefer, i.e. a book a year? No, it doesn't work that way. It's a good question. It just doesn't work that way. The contract dictates the terms when the book will be released. Because it's not at the writer's whim. There are two factors that determine when a book is going to be released. One, the amount of time it's going to take to edit the thing. And two, the amount of time it's going to take to print, ship, and market the thing. You sort out those two factors, and then you figure out when the book can be released. A publishing schedule the writer is the smallest part of a publishing schedule. They're just the supplier. Once the book leaves the writer and it goes off to editing at the traditional level, and then it goes to beta read, it goes to ARC, and it goes to pull quote, and it goes to marketing and all that stuff, it's out of the writer's hands. The writer will have some hands-on in bits and pieces, but by and large, the majority of the steps going forward are out of the writer's hands. The writer will get sent out to market it. The writer will get sent out to employ their own spider webs of sales. But the schedule for release is entirely financial. Okay, it's going to take the editor 4 months. It's going to take a month for the cover. It's going to take 3 months for the printing. It's going to take 2 months for warehousing. It's going to, we have 6 weeks for this and 5 weeks for that, and we've got a 2-month campaign lined up. So we put all these dates together and we try and pick and choose a window. The writer is not necessarily immediately like, oh, you're a writer, write me a book every year. The contract you sign lays out the terms by which you will produce content. Like, hey, I'm writing this book and I've got a sequel planned. Great. If, let's say, you start, your book releases in February, just picking dates, the publisher will generally tend to go, okay, well, February seemed to be a good month for us in terms of sales for whatever reason, depending on what you're writing. So then the assumption will be going forward with the next contract that the book will be ready by, if you want it published in February, you'll need it ready by November at the latest. But by and large, it's a contract decision. Good question. Great question. Is there a cadence publishers is it prefer? Oh God, publishers would prefer to have, multiple books every 6 months, like it used to be back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But there were a lot of different factors involved, including racism and sexism, homophobia, bias, drug use, alcoholism, spousal abuse, other forms of domestic violence, patriarchy, etc. So yeah, it's a financial decision. Just write the best book you can and set a contract that you're comfortable with if that's the avenue you're going to go. Next question before we go on to 11. Let me close 10 before I forget. Is there a novel length minimum that publishers will immediately reject? Are you asking what the bare bones size of a story is? Like what's the fewest amount of words I can write that a publisher will look at? It's not standard per every publisher, but I can tell you by and large for the novel publishers, if you're not busting 70,000 words, they're probably not going to look at it. Just because of the general social contract in and around the expectation of what a novel is. But because the expectation is if you can barely scratch 70 and you're calling it a novel, either you've misunderstood what a novel is or you've taken a novella and you've fattened it up. At which point you should be marketing it in a different way, and you should probably be querying it in a different way. There are several ranges of word counts in publishing where you're not quite enough for one and you're too much for another. And like 70,000. Go up to 80 to sit in novels, or come down to like 60, 55, 60, and you'll be in novella form territory. But straddling that fence, at least in traditional terms, won't work. Because they'll tell you like, hey, you give me another 10,000 words, fatten it up. Or hey, cut 10,000 out, trim it down. But again, if you want to do this yourself, if you want to self-publish, which I'm going to tell you right now, more of you should be considering. There is a paper and cardboard shortage. There is massive shipping delays. Advances get smaller and smaller and become rarer and rarer and less frequently over time. I do not know why so many of you are so quick to dismiss self-publishing, especially strictly in a digital release, as a viable way to do the thing you say you want to do. But anyway, yeah. Please try and break 75,000 words to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. Likewise, for maximums, please try and stay under 300,000 words. I tend to write my stories quicker. Please don't ever tell another human being that. That's going to immediately give the impression that you're sloppy. Quicker is not a great writing word. I mean, it's a fair word when you and I are talking about just how to lay something out or whatever. But in a professional context, quicker almost always universally translates to reject that person because they're hasty and they're more concerned about the end result than the process. Quicker's one of those red flag words. Quicker is one of these. Well, then just go be a short story author. Or learn how to plot a novel. Like learn how to write out a longer form. Like push yourself to develop the craft. But yeah, quicker, as in so many other contexts in life, talking about how quick you are to finish, for some people can be a very unsatisfying prospect. It's a lot. Sometimes I gotta take the long way around a statement, but I think you get what I'm saying. We don't want to be quick. We want to be good. I feel like that line is going to go over some heads, and I really didn't mean it to, but it made me laugh, and that's really all that matters at the end of the day, right? All right. I don't know if I follow that. Okay, Rob. Let's suppose we're going to break this way down, okay? Here we go. Let's suppose you're with another person. Okay? Yeah, you should ask. Yes, please ask your spouse as to the relationship between quick and satisfaction, and then come back to me. I'll wait right here. I'll be hanging out. It's cool. So here's the thing. My man. That's what's up. That's what's up. All right. Peace, God. Okay. I'm just tickled now that I got that out because YouTube is crafty, and I don't like getting those messages. So, yeah, Rob, I'm calling you out for a second because I'm gonna push you one way or the other because your questions have been really good, but they're leading towards a choice. Either you're gonna, yeah, that's what's up. Either go short story and be the best short story writer you can be, or go novel. Do I think screenwriting and novel short story writing are something someone can both be good at, or should one specialize? Oh. Okay. I do think they are a thing somebody can be good at. I think you can be good at both. I think it takes time to be good at each individually because on some level they have a lot of similarities, but on other levels they are grossly different. Not just in the visual formatting, but also just in terms of the general pacing and story structure. Screenwriting has a very different atmosphere for story architecture than novel or short stories, because novels and short stories give you far more flexibility to go in depth. Whereas with a screenplay or a stage play or a teleplay, you are kind of counting on some level of visualization based on the tense you're writing for your stage directions, right? You're leading the reader more and giving fewer specific details, or you are giving a fewer cumulative number of details while being specific. I think you can do good at, I think you can cover both. I think, though, you are on some level retarding your overall total progress. I think you can do both, but I would expect a slower road on each path if you do both. And I'm not just talking like I'm writing one of each at the same time. I think while the ideas are similar, there's just enough overlap to cause some dissonance, to cause some static. I can say this because I have much the same issue. Because I know there are things I can do when I write a screenplay or I edit a screenplay for somebody where I want to solve it with novel technique, or when I'm writing a novel, I know how I would solve it in a screenplay. So there can be some disconnect there. I think by and large, you can do both. And if you're okay with, slow, steady, consistent progress rather than leaps and bounds, do both. And you don't really need to specialize, to use your word in air quotes. I think, though, the vast majority of people tend to or would find success more along the lines of picking one and then doing the other well after the fact. Commit to one, push it forward as far as you can take it, and then do the other. Now, I'm saying that in part because that's, the road I'm most familiar with, because that's the road I had to do. But I'm also pointing out that the ability to focus on one thing and put the best work in it and to it gives you a chance to sort of iron out the bugs, so that if you get, let's say, really good at writing novel structure and you get a real clear sense of what the visual in your head is, it will make a huge difference when it comes to screenwriting, where you've got to account for that visual, that sort of descriptive prose without going onto the page with it. They will work in service of each other. Oh, thank you so much for subscribing. 3 months. Oh my God, thank you. You have just fed the cats. I think there's enough overlap between screenwriting and novel writing where pushing one over the other can influence the one you don't take. Screenwriting can influence novel writing, though they are different, but novel writing can very profoundly influence screenwriting. That's been my experience in 20 years. Yeah, 3 months. Hell yes. Here you go. Have air horns. Awesome. Awesome. Great question. Thank you so much for asking. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's do... Are we on to 11? Are we up to 11? Yeah, I think we're up to 11. Sweet. Question 11. a sort of technical one. Is there any difference between a darling, in air quotes, and something I wrote that I just like? Yes. First of all, this comes from the idea that you have to kill your darlings. We're all familiar with that phrase, right? There is a difference. There is actually a technical definition as to what defines and limits a darling. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this is really nerdy. This is the sort of thing where, like, you push your glasses up your nose and you stand by the punch bowl at the party, and maybe somebody comes along and shoves you into a locker. Level nerdy. This is at most going to be a really great answer to a bar trivia question, and maybe it's an icebreaker on a date. But by and large, this is not going to come up in a big, giant professional context. It's back pocket. It's what we used to refer to as back pocket information. You can just pull that stuff out and, oh, that's interesting. But it doesn't really go anywhere. So yes, here's the definition of a darling. A darling is a thing you create, or in this case, write, that you like, and it's something you have an emotional connection to. You don't just go, oh, well, that was a really clever turn of phrase. A darling is, oh, that's a really clever turn of phrase that speaks to something significant for me, that means something to me. I've tried to capture my own experience. I'm connecting with the human collective consciousness. Like, you're doing something. You've got an emotional thing, feeling, vibe, atmosphere, connection, whatever, along with the fact that you like it. The more emotional investment you have with the thing in question, the more of a darling it is. You're always going to like it. There's no such thing as a darling you don't like. Because the minute you stop liking it, it stops being a darling. Because the minute you're like, well, can I cut it? Yeah, it's no longer a darling. Feel free to cut it if you need to. But that stuff where you're like, oh my God, no, we can't take that out. I need that. I worked really hard on that. Burn it with fire. Burn it. Just lose it. I know you worked very hard on it. I'm not saying delete it forever from existence. Just cut it out and stick it over there on the side. Like, paste it into a different file. Save it for later. Maybe you'll use it. But for right now, it doesn't serve the machine we're making. So let it go. Just put it over there. Let it go. Is there any difference between it's emotional connection. That's the big difference. It's okay to have darlings. It really is. It's okay to be emotionally connected to your work. It's okay to have parts that you think are just great. It's okay to have parts that you think are great that you don't really like to get rid of, or that really annoy you that you have to get rid of them. Totally fine. It happens. It's not bad. Thank you so much for more subs. You guys are awesome. Thank you for supporting one another and making it, possible and cool. You're great. Back to this. It is completely okay, absolutely totally okay, for you to have darlings and feel bad about getting rid of them, or try and find some very elaborate Rube Goldbergian way to keep them. It happens. But it's all about that emotional connection. And sometimes we can't get rid of it. Sometimes we need it because we're trying to use that darling as a way of illustrating something that we couldn't find another way to illustrate. Totally fine. Great question, though. Others from Twitch, Zoom, you've been very quiet. Just want to make sure you're okay. I care about you, and I want to make sure you don't feel left out in this new conversation. I know we've brought new friends to the party, but Zoom, we've known each other the longest. We're riding to the death, man. We're in this. Questions? Zoom? Twitch? YouTube? Linus? Luna? Questions? Anybody? I am checking to see. Cool. All right. Let's move on to 12. For our second and final gentle advice question, as well as our last scripted question of the night. Gentle advice. I tend to give up on writing every few months. I write for a while, and then I get discouraged that no one will like it or that it's too similar to what someone else has written. Can you please help me? Yeah, I'm going to help you. Here you go. No, I only have the same 2 cats. I'm going to help answer this question, though. Okay. You're not going to know if anybody's going to like it until you put it out there. Because no one knows you've done it unless you say you've done it. Because I don't know about you, but I don't know what you do during the day. I don't know how you spend your time. I don't know if you really do write as frequently as you guys tell me you write. I don't know if you really care about what the things you say you care about. I don't know. I have to take your word on it. Oh, Twitch is the new cats. Well, I mean, that's not the word I would normally use in regular conversation, but I think I see where you're going, Rob. But yes. Anyway, I'm going back to answer my question now. You don't know, you can't, it's the bread dough example, right? The idea that you're going to measure your in progress, not yet cooked thing, and you're going to compare that to somebody's finished, polished, high quality material. And you're going to wonder why you're not good enough because you're looking at your bread dough that's barely been whipped together versus somebody's baked loaf. And while it's got the same ingredients, they're not the same thing. They're not going to be the same thing because when you bake your loaf of bread, it's going to turn out different than that loaf of bread because all loaves of bread are different. But you won't know if someone likes or dislikes your particular loaf of bread until you make it, until it comes out of the oven, until you take it out of the little bread pan and put it on the wire rack to cool. You're not going to know. Anybody who looks at the dough and says, I'm not going to eat that, well, maybe they weren't going to eat it no matter how you did it. You won't know if someone's going to like it until you finish it and put it out for the world to see. Because that's the only way they're going to know if it's for them at all, if it's available. You've got to make it available to them. And if you're going out of your way to reject on their behalf, you are guaranteeing they're not going to like it because you're not finishing it. So you've somehow, instead of giving yourself this ability to be creative and finish your work, you've given yourself this different superpower of sort of like assuming telepathy. You assume other people's state of mind and you make it true. Well, they're going to reject me, so I'm just going to reject for them so that they don't have to, so that I don't have to write. Oh, okay. I mean, you can, but my question to you, if you keep rejecting that and you keep finding different ways to say no and not finish, my question to you is this. Did you really want to write in the first place? Because if you keep finding reasons not to finish, if you keep finding things not to do, if you keep finding ways to stop, what's up? Do you just like part of the activity? I'll give you an example before we move on. There's this new game I'm playing on Steam. It's an older game, but I'm on a Mac and it doesn't run as many things as a PC, and I don't have a PC, and I here's what I have. But I'm playing this game. It's new to me, and I'm really good in the beginning, like the first 5-6 turns. I love. Once you get to like turn 7 or 8 or 9, where things start to like I need to expand and I need to grow and I need to do more things that I'm not entirely comfortable at doing, I don't do so well and I make some mistakes. And I lose a little bit of interest and I get overwhelmed pretty quickly because it's a fairly complex game. And then I get lost and then I start making mistakes without intending to, and then the whole thing falls apart and I lose. So what I usually tend to do, and maybe you do this with your writing, I tend to start a lot of games and only play up until like day 6, 7 turns in, where I'm in my comfort zone. And I'm great. I can come up with loads of different ways to do those first 6 turns. But I always stop before 7 because in my head, this little voice, this loud screaming voice that sounds an awful lot like my dad, this loud screaming voice shows up and it's like, well, you never make it past 7, you loser. So, why do you even bother? I never give myself a chance to get past 7. I don't sit down and commit to watching, the YouTube tutorial or read the wiki or whatever and even give myself a chance. Because I'm too used to failing. I'm too used to telling myself, you never make it past 6. And so for as long as I keep telling myself that, for as long as I keep perpetuating that, man, I'm not getting past 6. I love the game. I'm terrible at it. It's hard. But I like doing it. I like trying to do it. I'm excited that one day I'm going to figure out how to get to 7, 8, and 9. Maybe Saturday or Sunday I will. Who knows? But if I already decide in advance that I'm going to screw it up, that it's going to be bad, that it's not going to work out, I got to question whether or not I'm really serious about doing it in the first place. And if I am serious about it, why am I so sure I'm going to fail? Is it just because I have this thing in my head that screams at me like I'm only so good and I'm not good enough to go further ahead? Well, that just sounds like something I got to challenge. That sounds like something I got to go seek professional help for, and because it's beyond my immediate ken to resolve. So that seems like something I should work on so that I don't immediately assume for other people what they're thinking and how they're thinking it, so I can give myself a chance to go forward. Now let's address the second half of this, that it's too similar to what someone else wrote. Okay, come here. Come here. Come here. Not you, Linus. You sit there. You're a good boy. Reader, listener, person, writer, come here. Lean towards the monitor. It doesn't matter if what you wrote is similar to what someone else wrote. It's never going to matter. We've been telling stories for thousands of years. You are not the first person to think of a story with a magical school and a prophesied super student, or the troubled stubble-bearing ranger with a wild backstory who has to assume the mantle of responsibility, or the big giant kingdom that needs to be overturned, or the space fascists that need shooting, or the who knows what. These are not new stories. There's plenty of room in existence, in all of existence, for all different kinds of stories. The thing you need to remember, the thing you need to prioritize, the thing you need to put a big giant gold star next to is the very plain and simple fact that although the story conceptually is similar to another story, the big difference maker, the big thing that you should be screamingly rock metal godly proud of, is that your story is the only story that can be told by you, your way. Other people can attempt the same story, word for word in some cases, beat for beat mostly. Because each of us tells stories in different ways, to different degrees, using different interpretations and lenses and tools, and we bear with us different baggage and different experiences, everybody's stories are unique to them, and they are the only people who can tell those stories that way. And rather than hide from that fact, rather than run away from that fact, rather than take that as a sign that you should be embarrassed or afraid, I want you to instead embrace that fact. You are the only person who sounds like you. You are the only person capable of writing the way you can. This is not a comment as to whether or not you need to write better or fix this more. That's not what we're talking about. We are looking strictly at the ability to put your voice into the world. You are the only person with your voice. And this is especially true for those of you out there who, like me, spent way too long trying to sound like somebody else, because you thought the magic trick was to sound like somebody else and you'd get their success. When the reality is you have to sound like you because you have to go after your own success. And if you're sitting there listening to that going, yeah, but what if my success is less than somebody else's? Well, first of all, capitalism has poisoned you to think that you need to measure quality of success in order for it to be success. And 2, you can always improve. And you can always have more than you thought you could. I never thought I would simultaneously chat on multiple platforms and have more than 7 viewers. I've had 15 tonight. I never thought I'd have subscribers. I never thought I'd have long-term followers. I never thought I'd have enough money saved up to take a class in improving newsletter writing. I never thought I'd be able to buy a fancy soundboard and all this equipment and stuff. I thought I'd have to steal it again. You get to define your own success. You get to push your success more and more over time. You get to do that. And only you can do it. It's your success in whatever direction you move, to whatever degree you go. It's not going to be mine. It's not going to be hers. It's not going to be theirs. It's not going to be his. It's not going to be hers. It's yours. It's just yours. Now, if you're sitting here and going, yeah, but I think I'm just afraid of it. It sounds huge and big, and what the hell do I do? Yeah, believe me, I get it. I'm 43 years old. I've been afraid of success since I was about 12. I'm just now grappling with this. But just because you're afraid of it doesn't automatically make it ineligible for you. I'm afraid to succeed, but here I am trying to succeed. And the more I succeed, the less afraid of it I am, because I realize oh, wow, okay. It really wasn't that bad all along. Neat. That's the same kind of thing you got to take yourself to. That's the same kind of place you got to go. You're the only one with your voice. I don't know if anybody's going to like it or dislike it, but the important thing is that you're the only one who can use it. So why would you deny it? You can't run from it. It's always going to be yours, like your shadow or that one shirt in your closet. It's always going to be yours. So go with it. Admit it. Do something with it. Don't keep giving up. Please. I would love to know what you can do when you are willing to be brave. When you're willing to get out of your own way. When you are willing to make yourself a plan rather than excuses. I will be right here waiting, because I'm deeply enthused and excited at the prospect of what happens when you line up your interest with your opportunity and your ability. But you're not going to be able to do that if you keep giving up every couple weeks or months. So until then, we just keep waiting. Hope it helps. All right. Questions? Remaining things? Else, we will go to the outro. Twitch? Zoom? YouTube? Meanwhile, my inbox has been blown up. I noticed. Wow. Cool. All right. Other things? Issues? Stuff? Anybody? Anything? Else we're just going to go to the outro. How long? How long should I give time-wise for my new routine of my job to settle before I start to find time to write? Oh, right, your new job. Okay. It depends on how long you've been at your job. I would honestly say that if you've been at this job 3 weeks, you've got enough of an idea as to how your schedule is. You know what to expect on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday. You know the pacing of things, the effort of things, right? And you have started to budget your time. You have started to sort of map out how tired you are at the end of the day, when you're free, when you're not free, even if it's a flexible variable work, different. It's your first week. Well, Ross, your first week is not the time to start carving your routine. I love the enthusiasm. I love that you're excited about it, but wait until week 3 before you start really assessing, okay, this job leaves me X level tired or X level active or X level capable, so that you can figure out, okay, now I can start carving out my time. If your schedule is more variable, let's say you get like in a regular schedule, like some weeks you're planned for this and some weeks you're planned for that, then that's going to impact things. But again, before we even come down to specific calendar nailing down times, you still need to know like the overall energy level you get at the end of the week or the end of 2 days. So you're going to need 2 pieces of information to figure out this. And I think 3 weeks is a good window to do it in. Information piece number 1, you're going to need to know your schedule, like the literal time you have to work versus the time you are at home not working. 2, you need to be able to gauge your energy level, because what you're going to have to do to carve that writing time back in is find the confluence of this is the time I have energy and this is the time I'm at home. And in that space, that's where the writing time comes in. But you're not going to be able to figure that out until you're able to judge both of those things. Great question. Delightful. That's also true for anybody scheduling things who doesn't have a new job in their first week. It's true for anybody in a job now. You got to figure out how much time and energy that job takes and figure out the time and energy you want to write and figure out where the two make it possible. It's not an easy thing. It's not an immediate thing. It's one of the reasons why I don't sell towels and couches anymore. Well, to be fair, there are several reasons I don't sell towels and couches anymore. One of them being I like the ability to judge my time and my effort. So that's why I do this. Great question. Thank you for asking. Anybody else? Zoom? YouTube? Twitch? We cool? We going to the outro? I think we're going to the outro, you guys. Yeah, I guess we're going to the outro. Oh my God. Let's do it. Wow. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate you being here. You're all wonderful. I love you all. This means the world to me each and every week. I say this, and I don't say this lightly. You guys save my life every week. This matters so much to me. I love you all. This makes me happy. I am deeply, deeply happy. You have improved not only the tenor of my day, but my entire week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for letting me talk about publishing and writing and calendars and schedules and dates and believing in yourself and epistolary format and writing coaches and everything in between. You guys are awesome. Thank you. You're great. Now, the next time I'll be here, oh man, the next time I'll be here, let me grab that calendar, will be on October the 18th. That's Monday. At 7 p.m. Eastern, where we will be talking about something. I don't know what. Stay tuned for that. If you want to find out what we're going to talk about, the 2 best places you can go. 1, you can follow me on Twitter. Twitter.com/awesome_John. AWESOME_ That's shift in the dash key. JOHN. Awesome_John. Follow me and you'll find out what we're going to talk about. The other thing you can do, if you really want to support this, help keep the lights on, help keep more chats like this going, you can go check out the Patreon. Patreon.com/John helps you create, because that'll give you access to the Discord community, where I'm there all the damn time working on this business, talking about what we're going to do, figuring out what we're going to do, and how to make all this stuff work. It's the thing to do. It's the place to go check stuff out. And, $2 a month, you get hours and hours of essentially free coaching. It's super helpful. I hope you guys love it. So until then, I'll see you Monday, and I'll be back here on October the 20th. That's next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern for the next Writer's Chat. Until then, please, oh please, take good care of yourselves. Know that I love you. I care about you. I want you to be happy. I want you to keep making art. You guys matter. You're beautiful. Keep doing what you're doing. Please take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. Wear a mask. Wash your hands. Fight against fascism in all corners. All power to all people.